So we went through the whole tournament.
Yeah.
We went on tilt just a little bit, but we recovered.
Okay.
And we lost in the finals.
Sucks.
So now what?
You've been there.
We quit Magic forever?
I've been there.
Is that what you do? I thought I quit Magic for forever.
Quit Magic, yep.
And then the next day I was back.
Yeah, generally after I don't do well at a tournament, I'm like,
I guess I'm done forever.
Really good. I haven't said that in a while, but I'm like, I don't feel really good. I think I'm done for the day or whatever. You know, you want to take a break, you want to take the day off. I can totally get that.
And then you look at your binder and you're like, "There's all this wasted money." And then the next day you're like, "Well, I love Magic. I'm back."
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you want to keep playing. You want to keep having fun and stuff.
Right. So how do you recover from something like that? So yeah, I just did that a couple months ago. I lost in the finals, and then 2 weeks later I lost in the top 8.
Yeah.
And you won. But like, how do you recover from a tournament? Even if you do win, or really you do really well.
Yeah.
What are some things you do after the tournament?
I definitely I think the first thing I've written on here is accept criticism. You know, definitely move on. I don't like the word criticism. I don't know why.
Sorry about that.
No, it's like I understand what you're saying, but for example, I'm thinking of a case where I was watching Josh play Solar Flare, and he had an Alchemy and a Negate in his hand, and he'd been stuck on 2 lands because he kept an Isolated Chapel Plains hand or something like that. So he'd been stuck on 2 lands for like a turn or 2. So he's like a turn or 2 behind in terms of lands. So he draws an island, plays the island, and then main phase casts Forbidden Alchemy. And after the game, because he had a Negate in his hand, I'm like, why didn't you just wait to cast your Forbidden Alchemy end of turn? Because like he was playing versus someone playing a pod deck. I'm like, if he plays a pod, you have a Negate, you can negate his pod. And then you can take your turn, and if you miss your land drop, then you could main phase Forbidden Alchemy and try and hit your land. And if he doesn't play a non-creature spell, you know, if he just plays a creature or whatever, hey, you still get to cast Alchemy. It's the same thing, but you gave yourself an extra window for casting that, you know, negate or whatever, that extra window for, you know, being able to disrupt their plays rather than just being like, all right, Alchemy, because I really needed the land. And he's like, no, you're probably right. That was probably a better way to play that. So, like, I don't see that necessarily as criticism. I just see it as like, you know, I think maybe this would have been a better way to approach this, or you can ask people like, why did you do that? And they'll be like, well, my reasoning was this, this, and this, or whatever. So, but definitely being able to talk about your plays and not being defensive, I think, when someone goes, especially someone that's good, you know, at playing the game, being like, you know, you probably should have done this, or you could have done this, and then you kind of think it through and you go, yeah, no, that absolutely totally makes sense or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's a big thing. I actually have a story at a Grand Prix when I was doing really well. I was at table 1, like around 12 or 13. Yeah, yeah, doing really.
So you won that Grand Prix.
I made top 8. Did not win.
Did you win? You top 8 at Grand Prix?
I did.
Look at this guy, man.
So, a bunch of people were watching us because we're at table 1, and I am the first to admit in this match I got insanely lucky. Like, it was a bad matchup all around. My opponent got a little mana screwed. He didn't draw the best card in the matchup. I ripped like 7 cards in a row to beat it. I mean, I got insanely lucky to win. And that happened. And I have no trouble admitting that at all. That's saying I got lucky and I drew the right cards and he drew the wrong cards and that gave me the win. But one thing that was kind of frustrating was that, like, while I was playing, Antonio DeRosa was watching and he's like, oh man, like, you were playing so bad, blah, 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 blah. And he was just razzing on me, being, pretty critical about my plays and stuff. So after the match, when he walked away, I actually actively walked up to him. I wasn't mean. I just walked up to him and I said, hey.
Punched him in the face.
Yeah, I punched him in the face.
Okay. Then we got back up.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So I walked up and I said, hey, what was it that I was doing wrong, or that you saw that I was doing wrong? And I was being sincere about it. I was like, what is it that I messed up on? And he's like, well, like, you did this, and he had these in play, and then he had this card in his hand, and he was going to do this, and you were going to get crushed by it. And so I asked him, and he's like, well, if you would have done this, this, and this. So I've done that before, where I will actively seek someone out, and I will say, hey, what was it that I was doing wrong? What do I need to improve myself? I do that in WoW. I'll go up and ask some of the guys from Vegas who are really good limited players. I remember I was asking one guy, I was like, hey, like, what do you do? Like, how do you tell the difference between when you need to attack them directly, because in WoW you can attack both the creatures and them, and when you want to try and set up an advantage attacking them, and he's like, it's hard, you got to like figure it out and stuff. But he was nice about it. So yeah, I think that's something you can do if you want to ask your opponent like, what could I have done better or whatever in this match, or what could I have done better. And I think asking specific sometimes is better, because people will ask me, they're like, how do I get to be a better player? And I mean, we're kind of doing this, but it's hard to like be
you
like,
can't give an hour of this to every person.
Yeah, you can't be like, well, you need to do this and this and this and this and this and this. But in a specific game, if they do something and I go, I wouldn't have done that, I can explain to them why that specific thing I wouldn't have done.
Yeah, exactly.
So
awesome. Another thing, and you do this even when you win, right? Especially you do. You're really known for that.
Yeah.
You critique your plays even when you won the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I guess I won, but I totally messed this up and I did this wrong.
Yeah.
And not something harsh like that, but you're like, maybe I could have done this differently.
Yeah. I will do that all the time. Even when I win, you know, when I win matches, I will sit there and think, all right, what did I do wrong in this match? What could I have done differently? Everything. Like, you know, I will, and yeah, you don't want to be like, you don't want to be self-critical to the point of like, oh, I can't get any better, like, it just sucks, I'm really bad at this game, but you want to be like, all right, what did I do wrong? What should I have done differently in this situation or whatever? And I think being able to take that kind of approach to your game where you're like, all right, I'm thinking my way through the steps that I'm taking, and even when I win, like, you know, even if you go through and do really well at a whole tournament and you go, I made a mistake here, I made a mistake here, being able to recognize your mistakes will help you in the future to avoid making those mistakes again.
Awesome. And even with that, when you do make mistakes, when you lose, you can't get discouraged or wrapped up in it for too long.
Yeah.
Especially if you lose to something like luck.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like if you're just like, well, there's only one thing they can do, especially we have the joke here, if it's bonfire, right?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I have this good attack and they can block like this and I can do this, and no matter what happens, if they draw bonfire, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right? And then they go, oh, bonfire!
Yeah.
You can't get too discouraged over that.
Yeah, you can't let yourself get to the point where like I number one is I will try my best to avoid using luck as an excuse. Yeah. It'll happen. Sometimes you draw 14 lands when you have 18 in your deck. That happens.
Because you're the worst.
Because I'm the worst. But the bonfire thing. Man, I have one negate in my sideboard for the Delver list I'm playing right now, and I will side that in if they have bonfire. Like, every time. I'll do it, because, like, I don't want to lose to them top decking that card. And it is the best feeling in the world when you have a negate and they have no cards in their hand, they're out of gas, and you're like, I don't even care if you draw bonfire, because I'm going to negate you out of this game. So doing things like that, right, where you're like, what can I do to prevent myself from losing to them top decking, right? Like, you need to figure out, like, how to set yourself up in that position where you don't even need to worry about them top decking. And that's something that I try and do too. You know, I will think through, like, you know, hey, you've got no cards in your hand, and if I attack with all my things, and then you top deck a Traitorous Blood, what happens if you top deck a Traitorous Blood? And think it through. What if, like, think it through. What if the top card of your deck is that specific card? What happens in that situation? Like, how does that, can you still win next turn by making certain plays? And if you figure you can, then do it like that. So I think that's something that maybe, especially even like intermediate players won't do that, right? Like, they'll just be like, oh, this was the board position, and I did this, this, and this, and then he got super lucky and top decked whatever, right?
Zealous Conscripts.
A bonfire or Zealous Conscripts, and they top decked that card and they beat me with it. Were you taking the time to think through, what if they top deck this card? And sometimes you have to throw a caution to the wind. Yeah. Right? Like, that's how I won the PTQ in that last game, right? Where I'm just like, Delver, tap out for a sword. For the love of God, don't draw Dismember an Ancient Grudge, because I don't think I had any other way to win that game. But there are games I think people don't recognize where you can win by thinking through, what if the top card of their deck is this specific card? Is there a way for me to play around that card being on top of their deck and still set myself up in a position to win? And I think sometimes there is. So
awesome. The last thing I have here is just remember there's always next time, but also don't be content.
Yeah.
I think that's really important that I think like my aspiration, my goal is to be where you are and be even beyond where you're going with you. Like, get on the Pro Tour, stay on the Pro Tour, do really well on the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And so like I got second at one PTQ, and then I got I don't know what the position was, but I lost in the quarters of the next one, and I'm just not content with that. And some people are. I was saying this before, like when you sit down in front of an opponent in the top 8 of the PTQ, and like the first thing they say to you is like, "Man, I can't believe I got to the top 8. That's so awesome. I'm in the top 8. I win." And you're kind of like, well, then you're probably gonna lose right now, like because you're just not in it anymore. You've achieved the goal you set for yourself, and now you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas me, it's like, no, I got to win, or I just got some packs, like, and that was all I got.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had plenty of top 8s and top 16s, and it's to the point where you're not playing for the top 8 or whatever. I mean, to be fair, some events like Grand Prix and Pro Tours and stuff, man, you're like, top 8, and I don't even care what happens at that point. Like, right. I mean, but the thing is, like, for a lot of players, I think, like, especially local players and stuff, yeah, making top 8 at like, at a big event or whatever, they're like super excited. And I get that. Like, I understand, like, it's way cool that you did well and you made top 8 at, if it's states or PTQ or whatever it is you went to. But for me, it's definitely like, you know what, like, I've made plenty of top 8s at PTQs. For me, it's about, I'm playing in the PTQ to win the PTQ. So yeah. I definitely want to get in there, and I want to win the PTQ. If I was going to states this year, which I can't because I'm going to the Grand Prix, but
I'm going to be state champion. Man.
Yeah, but if I was going to states, I've made top 8 at states, I think 3 or 4 times, and for me, I'd be like, I'd make top 8, and I'm like, it's not good enough. I want to win this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what you want to do. You want to win. You want to say I'm the state champion. You want to win a PTQ and say I'm going to the Pro Tour. That's what you want to do. Yeah, you made top 8. Good job. Congratulations. You played well in the Swiss and everything. But you have what it takes to like keep going and to do well and win the whole thing. Yeah. If I had gone to WoW Nationals this year, I couldn't go because of scheduling conflict. But if I had gone to WoW Nationals this year, top 16, top 8, that would have been good enough.
I got second last year.
I got second last year. I got to do better than that, right? So where do I have to go except first, right? So
you could scrub out O2 drop.
I could do that.
Don't do that.
I will try to avoid doing
that. Well, I think we're about wrapped up.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Isn't Drew awesome? That was a yes.
That's a yes.
I heard everyone. Oh, we love Drew so much. Take off your shirt, Drew. Show me
all the pretty ladies come walking in here. You don't know where here is. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, I think we're gonna sign out for now.
Sounds good.
I love you mucho.
See you guys later.
Peace.